Okay. So just a quick overview of the agenda. So everyone has the agenda probably in front of you or beside you in the form of a printout packet that you had as you came in on the table. This is also posted on the RIT website for the event. It's also there along with information about speakers, the sessions, and all of that. So I'm going to be pulling this agenda up so that way we can keep track of time and where we are in the day. Another thing is that everything that we present to you all today, materials, resources, and if you have any cool resources that you want to also share with your fellow teachers or educators or any higher ed administrators, we're going to be using something called the GCTLC. Okay, so inside GCTLC, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a second, but inside GCTLC we have something called groups. It's a place where we can actually go in and just be collaborative, be a community of practice, which is why we're here. In this group session, we're going to have discussions. We can have a repository of files. So if you haven't done so yet, you can sign up to be a member of the GCTLC, and then you'll have automatic email sent to you, or we can actually enroll you into this group for this workshop. Okay, so that QR code is going to be at the center of your table as well. So the Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community is a platform. It's free. It's an open access online platform for the community, made by the community, for the community. It's made up of currently about over 2,600 registered users, so educators, industry individuals, and educators, I mean K-12 and higher education as well. Representing over 90 countries around the world, over 350 curriculum resources uploaded by now. And people are downloading these, they're using it. So we've had about 7,700 curriculum downloads so far since the inception and the launch of this platform, which was in late 2023. So with that, I'm gonna give the mic off to somebody else. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Amy Cannon. So Amy, is this on still? Okay. Amy holds the distinction of earning the world's first PhD in green chemistry. And she has dedicated and is continuing to dedicate her career to transforming chemistry education for a sustainable future. After completing her undergraduate, she pursued her passion for sustainability at UMass Boston, where she helped establish the first PhD program in green chemistry. And then Amy later co-founded Beyond Benign. She's going to tell you a little bit about that, a nonprofit organization leading the charge to integrate green chemistry into classrooms from K-12 through higher education. Her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the EPA New England Environmental Merit Award and the ACS P3 Regional Award. So we're thrilled to have her.
All right. Thank you so much, Omar. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just have a couple things to share before we get to, before we get to the keynote this morning. So thank you all so much for being here. I think I recognized a few of you from some of the workshops that we've run. Tom, right? Yes. I mean, over the years, because we've done a lot. We've been doing a lot of work in this state. It's a unique and really vibrant state. So we're really fortunate to have some good connections here, and fortunate to have a partner such as the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, who's really dedicated to making this state, this country and world a better and more sustainable place. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about our work. So much focus there's a lot of focus on how we create better materials, greener, more sustainable processes and products in support of a sustainable planet. We focus a lot up here on these sort of outputs, in a sense. And if we're only focusing on how we create and creating more sustainable products and not focusing on this whole pipeline, we're missing out quite a bit. So our vision at Beyond Benign is we envision a world where it doesn't matter kind of what you buy off the shelf. The molecular building blocks of the products that we use every day are safe for humans and the environment. that's a big vision, right? And I feel like maybe because you're here, you might share some of that vision, or maybe, have similar viewpoints. Like, that's kind of what green chemistry is all about, is making those building blocks safe and healthy for humans and the environment. And if we can do that, we're in a much better place. So that's our vision. And our focus of our work at Beyond Benign, we're a nonprofit organization, and our focus is here, really on upstream preventative, which again is a green chemistry thing, right? We're always looking for preventing and looking upstream, how we can do things better. Our focus is here. And if we can change that system, that sort of human input, right? The human resource that leads into industry and prompts innovation and better materials in support of a planet, then we're going to be a lot better off. And so that's our mission. Our mission is empowering educators to really bring green chemistry to their teaching and practice. And that's why we do what we do. And we do that in a lot of different ways. And again, that sort of, just pull that right up there, that sort of piece, focusing on that upstream piece is so essential. And I think that's what's really important about our discussion here today. And the theme of this workshop today is education and innovation, and bridging those two. And it's really those two pieces, right? We don't have all the answers yet, so we need innovation. And our education systems have to come along in order to support the changes needed in order to create those better materials. This is kind of our theory of change. So I already told you our mission and our vision. Our work, we carry out our work to empower educators in a lot of different ways. We do a lot of outreach and engagement through webinars, conference, and symposia, such as this. We have our GCTLC platform, which Omar mentioned. That's a online community platform. We offer all kinds of different little mini awards for educators to bring changes, curriculum changes. And then we also empower educators to be leaders, such as, and you're going to hear from the fantastic Scott and Annette today, who are some of our leaders who've been leaders with us for over 10 years. And so you'll see some of that in action. But Omar alluded that to, that part of, let me see, is that going to come up? Yes. Okay, part of what we do and why we do what we do to empower individuals, we empower individuals to really bring green chemistry to their institutions and then feed back into the community. Oftentimes if you're trying to create change and you're like, oh, this is so exciting, and you come back to your institution and maybe you might feel isolated and you might feel like you're the only one that is, has that sort of passion. We're here to help support you in tools and resources and community to really, give you that support to bring it back to your institution and create that institutional change that's needed. And then again, connecting back in with the community. Because regardless if we get all the technical stuff and all the science right, it's the social science that's really needed to create some systematic and bigger change that's needed in our society. And so that's why I think being here, being part of this community, join the groups on the GCTLC, will keep that conversation going throughout the year when we're not in person. And there'll be also, again, more opportunities to engage throughout the year. So with that, I think that's all I've got. Thank you so much.
All right. So now we're going to hear from a great individual, Dr. John Warner. He's going to give our keynote address this morning. It's a great honor to welcome Dr. John Warner, one of the co-authors of the book that defined green chemistry, The 12 Principles of Green Chemistry in 1998. With over 350 patents, John has made a profound impact as an industrial chemist, academic, and an entrepreneur. In my opinion, he's the perfect example of bridging that gap, right? Multiple roles. He founded the world's first PhD program in green chemistry, has received numerous awards, including the Perkin Medal, and has been recognized globally for his scientific and mentoring contributions, including the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science Mentoring and the August Wilhelm von Hoffmann Medal. Today, he continues to lead innovation as president and CEO of the Technology Greenhouse and co-founder of Beyond Benign. So John Werner.
I'll just use that thing. Okay. Is that working?
That's working.
This is working?
Yep. You're going to have to advance.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. Glad to be here. Happy that you're all here. Could I have, I'm curious how many people are from K through 12, university, and industry. So how many people are K through 12? How many people are university? And how many people are industry? Okay. All right. We're all here. That's all that matters. Thank you. And congratulations to everybody in the room leading this important effort, and RIT, the Golisano Institute, the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, and all the other supporting organizations here. It's my honor to talk with you. Sustainability is an interesting subject these days. You know, there's so many approaches. There's responsible care, safe and sustainable by design, resilient, systems thinking, limits to growth, UN SDGs, you know, circular economy, biomimicry, ecology of commerce, cradle to cradle, planetary boundaries. There's so many different approaches. And we live in a polarized society where I always find it kind of sad that someone says, this is the correct approach, and this is the wrong approach, and this is yesterday's approach, and this is today's approach, and this competition for someone egotistically having to have the only answer. Oh my goodness, that's probably why we have the sustainability crisis that we do have today. Every one of these approaches are important. Every one of these approaches have merit, and we must adore each one of them and embrace each one of them. If someone wakes up in the morning and says, I love this approach, instead of saying, you're wrong, that's the wrong approach, we need to help each other figure out how to work together. All right, because the world has a lot of diverse problems. We humans are a group of diverse people, so there's room for everybody. We got to get over this competition. Now, how does green chemistry fit into this? Well, when I go to sustainability conferences and I talk about these approaches, they really fall into two categories. Category number one is why. The vast majority of people, they're talking about climate change and plastics in the environment, why this is such an urgent problem. And that's important. And then there's a lot of people talking about what we should do. We should have UN SDGs, we should learn LCAs, we should develop metrics, we should measure, we should monitor, we should characterize. And these are super important. But these have a lot of job security, because describing the problem and measuring the problem doesn't solve the problem. And so really what we need to do is we need to also make sure we're focusing on how. All right? Because how is how we move away from this. And that's where I feel the field of green chemistry, it addresses the urgency, which is important. It addresses the metrics, but you can't measure something that hasn't been invented yet. And so we need to invent these technologies, and we need to get on it really fast. All right. So just as a quick background, I got my PhD at Princeton a long time ago. It was so easy to be a chemist in the 80s. Periodic table only had like 7 or 8 elements, okay? One was earth and one was fire. So it just made it so easy. Now it's gotten so complicated. But then I went and I worked at the Polaroid Corporation. And being in Rochester, I got to be careful saying that. I love Kodak. Okay, and at Polaroid, I created this technology called non-covalent derivatization. I'm such a nerd. The license plate of my car is NCD, and if you want to, put a couple bottles of wine in me and give me 30 hours, I'll tell you more about non-covalent derivatization. But this invention, I'm very lucky. I got a lot of patents at Polaroid. By the time, within 3 or 4 years, I filed over 50 patents, got a bunch of products on the market, and ended up working with the US EPA through the TSCA program, figuring out how to get products to market. All right, and that regulatory process, I found, gave me challenges. Not because of toxicity, not because of environmental impacts, but what I learned is that the US EPA, when you submit a technology, they look at all the technologies they've already approved. And if they can convince themselves that your technology looks like something they already approved, they go, okay, good. But if it's new and different, heaven forbid, that actually makes it more difficult. And so I ended up interacting with the US EPA as a Polaroid employee, talking with them about, well, isn't anything better for human health than the environment, by definition, going to be new and different? And if we have an infrastructure that makes new and different difficult, isn't that orthogonal to what our mission actually should be? All right, so here I am, I'm 27 years old, in the US EPA in Washington, D.C., talking about all these important political things. My career is going well. I've got all these patents, all these publications, all these awards. I'm on the cover of Celebrity Magazine, Inventor Dude. You think, my head is this big. I am the greatest scientist who ever lived. And disaster happened, and I lost my 2-year-old son to a birth defect. And lying in bed the night of my son's funeral, I'm asking myself, did something I touch in the lab cause this? Did something, heaven forbid, I got an award for create this problem? I didn't feel like some amazing super chemist. I felt there was something missing. And so here I am at the EPA talking about this very antiseptic, oh, we need to work with industry to create better technology. And I realized, wait a minute. I've never had any courses in toxicology. I've had no courses in environmental mechanisms of harm. How in the world am I going to invent things that are non-toxic and don't hurt the environment if it's not part of my training? And so Paul Anastas, working at the EPA, and I, we came up with this concept, green chemistry, and we started writing a book called Green Chemistry. It came out in '98, but I left industry because I felt this is not an epic battle of good and evil between industry and environmentalism. It is a crisis of how we teach chemistry. And so went to the UMass system, became full tenured professor of chemistry, full tenured professor of plastics engineering, and we started the world's first PhD program in green chemistry. And so Amy and I were both professors in this program and did this for about 12, 13 years, so loved academia. But I realized that the infrastructure of academia was inhibiting getting products to market. And the infrastructure of industry, interestingly enough, was also inhibiting getting products to market. If you have sales, the big thing is not to lose sales. And if you have no sales, it's trying to figure out how to have sales. And so Amy and I realized that we needed to change things up. And so the two of us in 2007, we left UMass. And our vision is, can we envision a world where the chemical building blocks of products used every day are okay for human health and environment? So she created Beyond Benign, what we're here to do. And I started a research institute, a private research institute that's not connected with industry, not connected with academia. It's just a private thing, and have been doing that since 2007. Okay, and so I started, it was first called the Warner Babcock Institute. It was rebranded to Technology Greenhouse in 2023, and Amy started Beyond Benign. All right, and so essentially, in addition to being in industry, I still hold academic ties. I have an appointment at Monash in Australia, an appointment at Technical University in Berlin, Chulalongkorn in Thailand, Samaya University in India, University of Birmingham in the UK, and see my shirt here, I'm representing. I'm a professor of practice of green chemistry at the Golisano Institute here at RIT. All right, but my lab is north of Boston in Andover, Mass, and in Woburn, Mass. There's a big lab in Andover, Mass, 20,000 square foot, where we synthesize small molecules and polymers. We do injection molding, coatings, and all the analytical instruments. We'd have a small bio lab to do neuroscience, electronics lab, and then we'd have an AI robotics facility in there. And it's just a tiny group of people. Okay, so we've never had over 20 people. All right, and so it's a small group and very modestly funded. And yet, since 2007, we've filed over 360 patents. We have licensed over 40 technologies to multinational companies. Now, I never name a company that I work with publicly, but these companies here have press releases. Oh, we worked with John Warner, so I can put these things up there. And we've started a bunch of companies. We have a pharmaceutical company with an ALS drug in phase 3 clinical trials. We have a cosmetic company with a non-toxic hair coloring technology that's been on the market for about 10 years, an asphalt pavement recycling technology to essentially allow you to repave. We have a photovoltaic company that it's called Ambient Photonics. Amazon has invested over $120 million. We're in manufacturing in California. We have a water harvesting technology, biotechnology. And so the point here is we're just normal people that are normally inventing with a small amount of funding. It's not that we're some weird geniuses. What people don't understand is that green chemistry not only has a moral and ethical component to it, but it accelerates R&D, and it makes people more creative. And so the reason we can be so productive is not in spite of green chemistry, but because of it. And so we work with companies to get products on the market, but we also then invent our own companies to get products in the market. But here's the thing, I don't take a personal equity in anything. Okay, that's why I wear the clothes that I wear here. All right, because to me, everything is in support of you. All right, we need to show the future generation that this is the right thing to do. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people standing on soapboxes talking about climate and toxics and making people sad and scared. My attitude is, this isn't about just the nasty and the sad. This is about the opportunity. Imagine a 19-year-old person working in the lab, pouring beakers and flasks. And because she gets something right, hundreds of thousands of people she will never meet are no longer exposed to a hazardous material. What could be more empowering? That is what most of the people in this room are dedicating your life to, is to catalyzing that. And we need to get this message across, that these inventions don't happen by yelling at people. We need people with the skills to do it. But if we're not training scientists on what makes a molecule toxic, what makes a molecule not hurt the environment, how in the world are they going to invent them? All right? And so the way I look at it, now, I don't claim to have any gifted insight. I don't claim to have the answers to the world's problems here. I've been at this for over 40 years, okay? And so I'm going to share with you the way that I look at it. But please don't think I'm so presumptuous to say that this is the way you should embrace things. But this is the way I look at it. Okay, we take natural resources and we extract molecules and ingredients, right? We have the mining industries, we've got the agricultural industries, we've got nitrogen from air, fossil deposits, and water. Then when we have these, then we open up the book of chemistry and we do synthesis at the molecular level, right? If you think about it, we take these ores and we make stainless steel. All right, we can take molasses and starch and petroleum and through a bunch of different synthetic transformations make a polymer, and we can sell it as a glue. All right, or we can take some ore and some petroleum, make this dione, and then take some biomaterials and natural gas and make this amine, put them together and make a dye. All right, or we can take some materials and make a polymer. All right. This is that step of synthesizing from the natural resource extractions and molecules. Now we've got these materials. All right. What do we do next? Now we manufacture products. So now we've stopped doing chemistry. Now we're just sticking things together, right? And so we can take the polymer and the pigment. We can make pigmented ABS. All right, maybe we can injection mold some cool things, all right? We can take the metal, we can ablative etch the metal, make some screws and bolts and things like that. We'll take some glue, put them together, and make a pair of scissors, all right? But think of all that history, all the natural resources, all the extraction, all the synthesis for a pair of scissors. Now, if we can keep this pair of scissors in use and reuse, that will be great. So we want the products to stay in use and reuse for as long as possible. And if we could do that, that would be cool. If we could hold the structure of the product and hold the chemistry of the product constant, this would last forever. But that would violate the laws of thermodynamics, right? Stuff happens. I said stuff, I'm being good. Okay, stuff happens here, all right? And now what happens? When that stuff happens, we gotta go to the next step. We gotta do what's called mechanical recycling, what I call the assemble and disassemble system. Now remember, we're not doing chemistry here. And so now what we wanna do is we wanna take the broken scissors, okay, let's extract the glue, let's melt out the plastic, let's really melt out the metal, and if we're lucky, we can remake the glue, we can remake the handle, we can reform the things, and we can make the shit. Wouldn't that be cool? So we now are allowing the structure to change. Now, things have changed. It's a melted blob, it's a handle. It's a melted blob, it's a blade, stuff like that. But we still must have the chemistry maintained. So that's the difference with the assemble, disassemble, is we're allowing structure to change, but we're maintaining the chemistry. Wouldn't that be cool? Unfortunately, every time we melt a polymer, every time we grind a polymer or a fiber, it is inevitable that we're going to do chemistry. And the properties no longer last. So entropy again comes into play. So right now today, we could go to circular economy meetings and pound our fist saying, we need this. But right now, our level of science in chemistry, we don't know how to do this. I don't know what I just did here. There we go. We don't know how to do this. Your students, maybe you, need to invent a way. So it's not a crisis of desire. It's a crisis of ability. Okay, so now, all right, because we can't do that, we gotta go the next step. Can we then molecularly process? Can we break the molecules back down using what I call the materials metabolism? And again, if we had another 30, 90 minutes and a couple bottles of wine, I could go on and on about this, but essentially, could we take the glue and go backwards? The answer is no. Our level of chemistry right now does not know how to do this. Could we take the polymer and go backwards? No. We haven't invented how to do this yet. Could we take the polymer and go backwards? No. We haven't invented how. Can we? I don't know that we'd want to reverse the stainless steel into that, but hypothetically, what the heck? Let's go back and do that and stick it back into mountains. I don't know that we want to do that, but we couldn't if we wanted to. All right? So now you realize as we're going backwards, it's not about desire. It hasn't been invented yet. Okay, now how about the extraction process? We want things to degrade back into natural resources through the regeneration cycle. All right, here we go. If we could take the polymer and have it go back to earth, wind, and fire, CO2, water, and ammonia, we could then use that as nutritive inputs for the agriculture, and we could have this beautiful return to nature. But 95% of the materials in commerce don't degrade. It hasn't been invented yet. All right? And so finally, we want to maintain these stable ecosystems. So close your eyes, go to your happy place. My happy places look something like this. This is where we want to maintain what we do. But what I just described, all of these molecules, and all I talked about was the primary molecules, not the equipment that's using it, not the energy that went into it, not all the, so just making this pair of scissors is a pretty complicated deal. Can you imagine if we start talking about solar panels, electronics, or automobiles? This is a tough job, but nobody goes into chemistry because that's the easy class. So we're going into this to take these challenges. Do people understand that this is literally an existential challenge for the human race? That we are not going to be sustainable by wanting it. It has to be invented, and it hasn't been invented yet. All right, so this graph, this chart that I put together, on the outside clockwise is the human-built world, and on the inside anti-clockwise is returning back to nature. And this overlap on the bottom is an algorithmical assessment of sustainability. It is foolhardy to believe we'll ever not have zero impact on human health and the environment, but it's to be mindful of it. How can we look at this and understand it? But the most important ingredient for doing this is humility. No one is smart enough to get this right, all right? Inevitably, we're going to make mistakes. And what we're doing right now, in addition to all the problems that we haven't invented, when we do manufacturing, there's always emissions in the environment. There's always leakage. That creates a porosity in the interface, and we lose some of our sustainability. When we do synthesis, there's leakage in the environment, and we lose sustainability. When we do extraction, there's leakage in the environment, and we lose sustainability. So when people put these plots together, oh, this is our life cycle analysis plan, they very rarely, if ever, say, every once in a while we'll have an oil spill, and once in a while we'll have plastics in the ocean, or train wrecks with toxic emissions, or CO2 in the atmosphere. We have a moral and ethical responsibility and a commercial opportunity to address these issues. All right? So one way to do it, the best way to make waste go away, is to redefine it as a feedstock. If we could take all these emissions, capture them, all this waste, and come up with new ways of making materials, wouldn't that be cool? But they haven't been invented yet. All right? And so I feel the mistake people make is that if we have enough people shouting at industry, creating laws, yelling at people, somehow magically this all happens. But without our students inventing a path forward, we can't do it. Right now, we are focusing on telling people what not to do. Imagine if our students learn and say to society, do this instead. Imagine the power that has in changing the world. All right? So we need to invent technologies that help the human race adapt to behavioral practices that are more sustainable. But right now we can't. There's a lot of effort. We need to dematerialize. We need to reduce consumption. Right now, wealthy people have an ample opportunity to reduce consumption. So we wealthy people, we can talk about reducing consumption. But developing countries that are struggling, to tell them to reduce consumption just ain't going to work. It's morally and ethically inappropriate to do so. So for us to reduce consumption, we need to invent technologies that enable the reduction of consumption. It's not just simply doing less. It's inventing products that use less so that we can be fair and equitable across the globe. All right, and it's super important. And we also have to realize, I always joke, I much rather be working with molecules in a beaker than trying to get people to behave differently. And so we need to also invent technologies that are intrinsically in harmony with nature, so that if the product gets out into the environment, we don't call ambulances and get body bags, we get a broom, or it biodegrades. But right now that has to be invented. All of this has to be reinvented. All right? It's not that we haven't done amazing things. The last 200 years of chemistry, we have cured diseases, we've fed the hungry, we've housed people. The human suffering has been reduced massively. So I'm not being critical. There's amazing things. But we just never really thought of this other aspect. All right? And so again, looking at the how and the why and the what, this is where we need to connect the molecules and products of the future with the UN SDGs. When someone comes to me and says, oh, John, only 3 or 4 of the UN SDGs involve chemistry, those are fighting words, okay? All 17 of the UN SDGs are absolutely intrinsic. We're not going to address poverty by wishing it away. We need to have jobs. We need to have ways of changing the economy, and there's going to be a thing that's going to be involved with that process. If we solve UN SDG 9 by creating a problem with 10 and then solve 10 by creating a problem. Green chemistry, the whole point of green chemistry is to have this holistic view. You recognize that if you look at green chemistry doesn't say global climate change. Green chemistry does not say plastics in the ocean. Green chemistry doesn't say circular economy. Because it's supposed to, the whole point of it, it is the mechanistic science that underpins inventing the new alternatives. And we want it to be future safe. So if you want to do circular economy, you use green chemistry to invent something. If you want to work with the UN SDGs, you use green chemistry to invent it. If you want to address a social justice issue and not cause additional problems, you use green chemistry. So green chemistry isn't the thing that you measure. It is the R&D tool, is the knowledge that the person has in the research lab to enable them to do it in the first place. So Paul and I, and Astis and I, and it's really interesting when you think about it, green chemistry did not come from academia. I was an industrial chemist. Paul was working for the government. We both left our jobs and went into academia after we created green chemistry. Okay, and so green chemistry, we thought we needed to have a mechanistic science, journals, textbooks, classes, conferences, and workshops. And so that is the birth of green chemistry. Although it came out in 1988, I look back in my notes, we started writing this in like 1995, and so it took us a while, and then this was back before all kinds of electronics, and so some group of people had to etch little things in stones to print this thing back then, but so it took a while for it to come out, but it was really in the works, 5 years earlier. And we wanted it to be precise. We didn't want it to be ambiguous. And so when people say, well, what does green chemistry mean? I'm not, oh my God, there's a chapter. What is green chemistry? All right. In that chapter, there's the definition. And then it's expanded to the 12 principles, okay? And so we wanted there to be no ambiguity on this, that this is about the skills required to invent solutions. All right? And so I've just been so, it's so amazing to see how this community has evolved. There's now over 12 different languages the book has been translated into. 3 weeks ago I was in Brazil. They unveiled the Portuguese translation of it. I counted. I've been to over 90 countries in the last several years, meeting kings and queens and prime ministers and presidents. But I'm nobody. I'm just a name on a book. All right? What's making this happen is the community, the people in this room, the thousands of people across the globe that are making this happen. And I'm just a convenient figurehead. And sometimes it's so not fair that I'm the person, oh, John won a green chemistry. What do I do? It's everybody else that's making this happen. Because we realize that green chemistry is more than just focusing on environmentally benign and non-toxic. Because you can publish all the papers in the world, but if no one is using the technology, we're not solving the problem. So we need to have products that work better than the incumbent technologies so people want to use them. And man, they has to be economically appropriate. We can't have just wealthy people can afford it. So you ready for it? For us to have green chemistry, what do you need to do? You need to go beyond benign and have better performance and better cost. Okay, that's the whole point of this. And so if everyone woke up tomorrow, if all the whys and the whats succeeded, and everyone woke up tomorrow saying, every person, every retailer, every manufacturer, every brand said, all we're going to do is sustainable technologies. I would argue maybe 10% exist. 90% don't exist. There's maybe another 10, 15% coming up. But right now in 2025, 80% or more of the technologies have not been invented yet. Imagine one of your students, with your help, turns a traditional technology into a green chemistry technology. It's the only way we move forward. So the barrier to sustainability is not desire, it's invention. All right? Because if we can invent a technology that people want, because it works better and it costs better. We don't have to beat them up about, if you're a good person, you'll use this product because it's more sustainable. That's because we have failed in making appropriate. The hardest thing I find when I go and talk to people about green chemistry, and I say, oh, chemistry, we want to learn how to make molecules not toxic and not ready. Most non-scientists are incredulous. You mean you haven't always done that? Think about that. So that I think is it. So how do we learn to make better products if our crisis is getting products to market? So what I did is I mapped out the time and resources it takes, and this is about bridging the gap between academia and industry here. How do we look at the resources it takes to make a product, to bring a product to market? And there's two things. There's research and there's development. Okay? Research is bumpy. Okay? For those in industry, if you try to put research on a Gantt chart, that's kind of weird to me because you can't do that. You got to give it time and resource constraints, but you can't plan it. I can't say next Tuesday at 2:30 I'm going to invent the solution to this problem. I go in the lab, I bang my head against the wall, and eureka, and then I work, eureka, and so it's bumpy. All right, but then once all those inventions are done, then it goes on. So, and again, if we had 90 minutes and a couple bottles of wine, I would go into the 3 phases of research and the 3 phases of development that I've been using. But here's the thing: in the 80s, academia did a lot of research and a bit of development. And industry did a lot of development and a little bit of research, and it was okay, this transition. But now in 2025, when I was a graduate student, it would have been a punchline of a joke to say, you must publish X number of papers in order to graduate. We would have said, wait a minute, you can't quantify research by publications. Some projects are long, some projects are short. But now most universities have this minimum requirement of papers. And there was no such thing as impact factor. And so think of what that's done. You do methyl, you do ethyl, you do propyl, we'll get 3 papers, yes! And what's happened is academia now is doing less development. At the same time, in industry, these corporate labs were the coolest place to work. Polaroid was the coolest place to work. Dow, DuPont, all these companies were amazing. And then the transition happened. Jack Welch and others said, wait a minute, R&D is just a cost center. And boom, now all of a sudden. So at the very moment we need these solutions, we're hurting. All right? Enter entrepreneurship. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone be an entrepreneur, but what I'm saying is if you love academia, be an academian, be the best academic you can be, but learn to communicate, not with industry, but with the entrepreneurial community and industry. If you're in industry, be the best industrial chemist you can be, but learn to communicate with entrepreneur community and academia, all right? But that means we need to reinvent how we invent. And here's the thing. All right? People say, okay, we'll take money, we'll take ideas, we'll make products. All right? If we want to make more, we just put more money, more ideas, and we'll make more products. There was absolutely zero evidence that this works. Okay? In the 1980s, 22% of invested R&D made its way to product. In 2025, we're under 2%. We're not making progress. And I would argue it's not because of the science, it's not because of the marketing, it's because we've overflown the process of planning the research, scheduling the research, designing the research. And what that's happened is we're not doing as well. But can you imagine if we also use mechanistic chemistry and the intellect of the green chemistry community to not only look at the molecular structure, but actually ask ourselves, how can we do this? How can we improve the amount so that every time someone invents something, how do we make sure that it has a better chance of making it to market? Okay? And it has to have better performance, it has to have better cost. But we also have to look more introspectively. Right now, everything has to be a home run. Everything has to be a billion-dollar product. That hurts the economy. It hurts local economies. If we can start decentralizing and start looking at making local jobs where 20 people manufacture a product within a vicinity, now we're creating jobs. We got to really, really think about this. All right. And we chemists have the best opportunity to help. All right. So the way I look at it, there are infinite molecules and there are infinite products. And people go, oh, it's so hard to do this. They talk about the valley of death and how complex it is. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings. It's like crossing the land of Mordor. You know, it's like, but here's my secret. My secret is that although there are infinite molecules and there are infinite products, there's actually a finite number of mechanisms, right? Things stick together, things are stretchy, things pull, you run out after 60 or 70. And so if we look at a product is defined by a material property. Okay, is it blue? Does it stretch? Is it sticky? Okay, it's a quantifiable consequence of molecular mechanisms, all right? But it's still not a molecule. But a material property is created from material mechanisms, crystallinity, chain mobility, Hansen parameters. Okay, that's getting a little bit better. That's an intermolecular process of more than a nanometer in a polymer. But that is still not a molecule. But a material mechanism is a consequence of a molecular mechanism. That is an intramolecular process of less than a nanometer in a polymer. Bond rotation, enthalpy of formation, stuff like it. Now, we can look at a molecule, say, what are the molecular mechanisms? What are the material mechanisms? What are the properties? Ooh, we could make these products. Or look at an unmet need in a product, say, well, what are the material properties? What are the material mechanisms? Either way. And if you want to do green chemistry, if you want to make a sustainable product, put it on the list. But if you've never learned the mechanisms, if you have no clue what are the mechanisms that constitute these properties, how in the world are you going to invent them? You can yell at people, it's got to be more sustainable, but if they didn't learn the mechanisms, they can't invent. And we can use good old-fashioned intuition or AI to get between these different verticals. And we could use this to invent the next Apple product. But what my bias is that we chemists have been doing chemistry for 200 years, maybe 250, right? Nature has been doing chemistry for 3.8 billion years with a bit of humility. Instead of saying we're going to make molecules do what we want them to do, maybe be a little bit more humble and ask nature. And instead of an Apple product, look at an apple. How did this evolve? What are the oxygen barriers, the water barriers, the viscosity, the nutrient transport? There is a textbook of material science in nature that we're just not looking at. But if we can look at with humility and understand the properties and the materials, maybe we can start making more sustainable products. But we need to focus not only on what the technology does, but also what the technology is. We could make a solar panel using toxic materials. We could make a water filtration device using carcinogens. So when people are grumpy about chemistry in society, it's not usually because of what the technology does, it's what it is. All right, and so we need to do both. We need to be focusing on both, all right? And so using this, and so I feel that these mechanistic theory and the 12 principles of green chemistry have enabled my very small group of people to be successful. We are batting about an 80% rate. The things that we do in the lab, about 80% have made it to the real world. All right, so and it's not because we're some genius people. I think it's the strategy that anyone could do if they understood it. But what keeps me awake at night and why I'm so excited to be here is this thing here. We still have a long way to go. We need every chemist on the planet to understand this, to understand the mechanisms so that they can invent these things here. And so my personal heroes, the people that, and I'll try not to get emotional here, is Beyond Benign in the work that they're doing. It is just amazing to think that they're changing. So they do K through 12 education, they do community work, and they do, what I want to talk about at the end here is they work with universities. And they have what's called the Green Chemistry Commitment, where they ask colleges and universities to sign a commitment. The commitment's not that big of a deal. They do it any way they want to do it, but they say, we're going to put the principles of green chemistry into the required curriculum, not as an elective. But we as a university feel morally and ethically responsible that if we're going to hand someone a degree, send them off to industry, we're going to think their name, my university, will be associated with them for the rest of their career. And if they make products that aren't good for human health and the environment, maybe I own part of that responsibility. So maybe if I equip these people with the skills, they will start solving the problems. And that's where I think people want to say, oh, should we work on polymers? Should we work on solvents? Should we work on this? Work on people. Trust people. If we equip people with the skills to solve these problems, look out, world. And so there's almost 250 signers of the Green Chemistry Commitment now. Again, I've been to Brazil, been to Spain, been to France, been to Germany. All around the world, there's just amazing progress that the students, the faculty, the administration, the local communities, the supporting industries, we're right on the cusp of amazing change. And that's because of the people in this room and because of Beyond Benign and the amazing things they're doing. So if your organization hasn't signed the Green Chemistry Commitment yet, please, please do. I feel very strongly not signing the commitment is a much louder statement than signing the commitment. All right, because it's not being prescriptive. Okay, UC Berkeley does it one way, Stockholm University does it another way, Kyoto University does it another way. And this community is such a sharing, caring, giving community that if a new university wants, they don't have to recreate the wheel. They just take from and share from other people, and then if they create new things, they can put it up into this community. All right, and so I end with saying that I am the most optimistic person in the world. With this horrifying things that are facing us in our society, I do believe we can do this because of you in this room, because of you caring and being part of this future. So I end just by saying thank you for what you're doing, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future, and I hope this is a great day for all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John, for that inspiring message to kick us off on a great Green Chemistry Day. We have maybe about 2 or 3 minutes if there's a really nice urgent question that you all might have that we can take from the audience. So I saw this hand up first. I don't know who had their hand up.
Good morning. My name's Ann Locke. I'm with Lotte Biologics in Syracuse, New York. Our biggest challenge, we have converted completely to, we're on the biologics manufacturing. We don't use synthesis and chemistry to create drug substances for people. And we have gone from being number 2 in the state as a polluter to off the list over the years. My largest volume of hazardous waste that I still have is from the testing I have to do in the labs.
Yep.
And nobody's focusing on how do we get the testing procedures for all of these lovely products to be non-hazardous and not create the waste we don't want.
Yeah. So that's thank you for that very good question, and that's a big part. So the principle 11 is of the 12 principles of green chemistry focuses on analytical technologies because, and there's a fairly large and growing community that's trying to invent analytical technologies that are less impactful on humans. And one of the companies that I have founded is actually a new chromatography system that usually normal chromatography, you have an inert substrate and you change the solvent polarity to do your separations. We've invented a wireless LED solid support that changes the polarity of the solid support, so you have an isocratic elution, and so there's ways. But there is oftentimes a discontinuity, I'm being polite, a discontinuity between our regulatory structures and the needs for the environment. And there's a lot of work going on, but that's a lot of tough work, and that's an important thing. Yeah.
Okay, we have one more question here.
Thank you for the inspiring talk. I've heard you speak a few years ago, and I came for a refresher.
Yeah.
The big difference in the meantime is, at least for me, AI. And you just mentioned it passingly in the end. But I work in a university for about 30 years now, and everything in the past couple of years revolves around it. And on the topic of, yes, connecting the dots and invention and everything, there is this notion that, hey, maybe you put things in AI and out will come the ideas. So I wanted to hear your perspective on this, which I'm sure is something you've been thinking about.
Thank you. It's a very important subject, right? And the first thing is I don't like the concept of AI, the words. I rather consider it enhanced intuition. That AI absent intuition is always going to be somewhat useless. There still needs to be a kernel of knowledge that AI enhances. But the way that I look at it is I believe AI is going to be a fundamental staple in the future. We are not there yet. And the way I explain this is when my daughter was 4 years old, I was the greatest magician in the world. I could pull coins out of her ear. I could have my fingers separate, and she was, ah! Okay, now she's 13 and I'm just an idiot. All right, my skill as a magician hasn't changed. Her perception of what was going on. I feel the people funding AI and supporting AI are like my 4-year-old daughter right now. And some people are taking advantage of that and saying, oh, look I have this magic box that can predict the solution to this problem. Go, here's some money. And a lot of it is just nonsense. I believe there is hope, there is a future, but I'm worried that in about a year, 18 months, there's going to be a bubble burst. And we need credible people to survive the other end of that bubble because there's too much junk in AI right now. But I am a believer, and one of my companies is called Coformer AI. And what we're doing with that is most drug substances, they have great medical properties, but they're not very good oral bioavailability. They're not good, what's called PK in that. And so we can take a known API and using AI and what I call non-covalent derivatization, we can improve that dramatically. That is an example of where AI can enhance this technology. But there's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now, and I hope that doesn't hurt the field because society needs the field, and I hope that the smoke and mirrors doesn't inhibit us. But I do believe it will be an important part of the future, but it's got to be honest, it's got to have integrity.
Okay. Thank you, John. And can we give him another round of applause? Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to move on with our agenda for this morning for about 30 more minutes. Sarah Briggs is going to tell you about connecting K-12, higher ed, and industry. So Sarah Briggs, it's a pleasure to introduce Sarah. She's a passionate advocate for safer chemistry and sustainability. She serves as a senior research specialist and program manager for green chemistry and emerging contaminants at the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute here in RIT. In this role, she leads statewide green chemistry initiatives and conducts critical research aimed at reducing toxic chemicals in consumer products and industrial processes. She has a very diverse background, including working as a research chemist, educator, environmental health and safety specialist. She has a very well-rounded perspective to her work at the intersection of science, education, and policy. So welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's a little short up here. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I want to start really by just expressing so much gratitude for today because, as you know, John and Amy have already mentioned, none of the work that we're talking about today would be happening without the people in this room and the people in this community. But specifically also about this great, wonderful event, I would be remiss to not thank all of our lovely staff. So if I miss anyone, I'm very sorry, but I would like to thank our IT staff, catering, tech crew, the video crew, the people behind the scenes who are doing that work to make this also accessible for people who couldn't be here. So we really appreciate your help. All of my colleagues through GIS and Sims who helped with the event space, the setup, driving around to put the signs up so we could all get here. I know that was fun this morning, right? I saw them out there. Also, our speakers and panelists who are here today, it means so much that you're sharing your expertise with everyone who came. So thank you for making the trek, some from very far away. And then the Beyond Benign team, I love working with you. You are my favorite not official coworkers. So, it's just been such a pleasure to plan this with all of them. They're wonderful, and I really cannot express how grateful I am to work with them. And lastly, the P2I team, particularly Sherry and Steph in here especially. I just have to shout out for them because really I don't think any of the work that we do could happen without them. So if I missed anyone else, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Okay. So today I wanted to talk about connecting all of these different levels kind of education that we're talking about. But I also thought that maybe some of you, having seen this event, you saw green chemistry, you saw Beyond Benign, and maybe you saw NYSP2I, and you were like, what is that? So in case you don't know, we are the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. And we are having the event here at RIT where our headquarters is. So our office suite is actually kind of behind this area. And we've been here for over 15 years. We are taxpayer funded. So we are funded through the Environmental Protection Fund, and then that is administered through a grant from the Department of Environmental Conservation. So we are a state entity. It's a little weird, but that's how we exist. And our overall mission is pollution prevention, or otherwise source reduction. So really, that green chemistry principle, waste prevention, if you don't create pollution in the first place, that's the best way to prevent it. And in our work to do this, we have a wide variety of focus areas. So I would like to give some shout outs to all of the work that we do at P2I, and then we'll dive into specifically our program with green chemistry. So first we have something right here, sustainable manufacturing assessments. That's part of our direct assistance, kind of technical assistance program. So we will go out and work with companies throughout the state to help them really make more sustainable processes, swap out hazardous chemicals, hazardous waste reduction. And then there's also a big water component. So water reuse, wastewater reduction, those sorts of things for that program. We have a sustainable supply chain program, which is really great. It's kind of more of a high level program that helps companies with various types of certifications. They did a really cool project with the Port Authority to help them with their solid waste program. So that's a really high impact area. There's a lot of interest from industry. We also do a tech commercialization program, and that covers a lot of different grounds. We have greenhouse gas assessments that we'll do for products. We help startup companies. So kind of to John's point about, really that entrepreneurship umbrella and helping these different types of, startups and budding companies that might need a little assistance. We will do projects to kind of maybe help them understand, what's the next thing they need to do to get to commercializing their process, product, whatever it is. They also do life cycle assessments through that work. Then we have the Sustainable Food Program, which is more than just food waste diversion. That's what we have it up here as, but related to composting initiatives across the state, really making sure we're maximizing that resource. Then we have our outreach and education program, which is really wonderful. I mean, we basically try to do outreach and education about all of the work that we have, but we specifically have a community grants program that is within that, where we fund more like grassroots organizations to do different projects that they want to do in their communities. And that's really great to engage people on the ground, meet them where they're at and support them in their sustainability goals. Then we have an R&D program, which I will talk about a little bit more with some of our partner universities. And lastly, but not least, what we're talking about today, which is our green chemistry and emerging contaminants program. So we have a statewide network. We have 5 partner universities, which are shown by the blue squares. So we are here today at RIT, but then we also partner with Cornell College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, SUNY Binghamton, Clarkson University, and RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And so, as I mentioned, the R&D program is one of the ways we engage with the partner universities. And this is something I'll talk about a little bit more with our work for higher ed. But that's one of the ways that, we try to create an overall statewide ecosystem where we're really using all of the expertise we have at these different educational institutes to maximize our ability at P2I to help complete these projects and to really make an impact across the state. So it's a really great resource that we have. We also, we work very closely with the DEC. They administer our grant, but we do a lot of projects with them. And we also get a lot of our industry connections through the manufacturing extension partnerships, so the MEP centers. It's really, really awesome and helps us kind of make sure that we're not clustering in any one part of the state when we're doing our work. And then the last kind of overview for P2I sort of projects is that we do a lot of different work, so not all of the projects fall into this model, but generally the idea is that we work with either companies, municipalities, or other nonprofit sorts of entities. They have to be based in New York, again, because of our funding source. And really, this is kind of a typical project cost, but really we've done small projects and projects that are much larger. Like I mentioned, the Port Authority project was really quite big. So depending on what the needs and requests are, we will basically adapt what kind of projects we do. And our grant funding offsets a lot of that cost for the companies or, basically entities that we work with, so that we can really prioritize getting, our assistance to the groups that need it. And then we follow up with post-project reporting. So that's basically we track our metrics and we try to basically take the information that we get from that to further direct our efforts to make an impact for the state. Okay, so focusing on my program and what we're all interested in talking about today is the green chemistry and emerging contaminants work. And we've really tried to support both the education component as well as the implementation component of green chemistry at all of these levels. So K through 12, higher ed, and industry, which is a lot. And as we've heard about already this morning, this is a really large problem and it's a lot of ground to cover. So we're really, again, hoping that getting people together for an event like this will help kind of bridge that gap, make connections, and we can extend our reach by growing that community. So let's see. Yes, let's go to K through 12. So obviously, we're doing this event with Beyond Benign. We've had a very long partnership with them at this point in time. But some of the high-level work that we've supported with them is really supporting teachers in professional development opportunities. So especially over the summer, we've subsidized teachers in New York State to take some of the courses where they learn about green chemistry and they're able to kind of, develop some labs and like integrate that into their curriculum so then they can go the next year and start without, reinventing the wheel. We've also supported people like Annette and Scott and some of the other lead teachers that they have to present at conferences, like Stannis and some of the ACS conferences. And so we're really, again, that investment in people to get this work done is important. And then if you come to the breakout session later today, you can learn about some of the New York State specific resources that we've developed for K through 12 to really help so that if a new teacher is interested in learning how to use this, we've made those materials readily accessible so it's not as daunting as saying, okay, teach a completely new type of work. We've also done some additional outreach and support, again, through DEC and for the state, really focusing on chemicals management and lab safety. And we are going to continue, hopefully in the next year, with initiative to target legacy chemicals in schools and hopefully support schools transitioning from purchasing more of those same toxic chemicals and replacing those with safer alternatives through a green chemistry curriculum. So that is all really good and exciting work. Kind of in a similar vein, some of our higher education work has again been twofold. One hand, we've done some resource development. So if you come to the breakout session again, I would be happy to talk about a case study that we co-developed that was based off of a P2I project. It was a direct assistance project like I described. And we worked with some wonderful New York State educators from New York City to develop this case study that can be implemented for higher ed, which helps with the green chemistry commitment and ACS guidelines for normal expectations for green chemistry. And then on the other hand, our partner universities, again, being in that ecosystem of having multiple universities together for P2I, we've tried to leverage that. So last year we did a really cool summer research program where we supported students for a research project over the summer, and then they presented at a symposium in the fall and got to talk to people from industry and policy. And the hope is that, again, teaching those students to think about using the principles of green chemistry in their work and hopefully taking that with them as they then go into the workforce. And we've also, the research and development program, some of those projects have had green chemistry components. And we've done some really cool work for some of the analytical testing with methods development with some of those labs from Clarkson. So trying to now take all of that work that we've done with them and through events like this and an initiative I'll talk about in a moment, we're also going to try and make more connections between those higher ed institutions and maybe K through 12 and or industry to really facilitate bridging the gap, making that pipeline stronger. Lastly, some of the industry projects we've done. So the case study I mentioned was based on a PFAS replacement project. That's a hot topic, I think, for anyone who's been working in chemistry sustainability, so forever chemicals. But we also just finished up methylene chloride replacement project and really just trying to find safer alternatives. There are always trade-offs, but luckily we have a really good team, so we're able to kind of address these problems from multiple different perspectives. But kind of in line for today, we are also planning some workforce development trainings to really, again, reach out to industry, reach out to some of those smaller to mid-sized companies in New York State and have them learn about green chemistry, see if there are opportunities for us to partner with them to help them with problems and kind of meet them where they're at while we still continue our work in education to really support, again, those pipeline of the students who are then going to be our next generation workforce. And lastly, I'll just mention we do a lot of support for DEC and legislative work. So part of Omar's introduction was about our policy support. And there's a lot of work on that side too. So we've done some research and or testing to support toxics in products like children's products or consumer cleaning products and cosmetics and stuff like that. So it's pretty it's pretty cool. But really, I think what we're trying to think about today is, when we think about all of these different levels of ways that you could think about chemistry, and how do we bring those all together, or like, what are we really trying to do, right? We're trying to connect our work and make a difference. And I was thinking about today, and I was like, all right, we're going to have a lot of technical speakers. John is going to give a great, overview of like the technical side of green chemistry. We have the breakouts. So I just wanted to think about something kind of basic and bring it back to when I was teaching, because what did my students respond to really well? And I think people just in general respond to things that they can relate to. So sometimes when people ask me what I do, they're like, what is green chemistry? Right? It's kind of a weird question, but what I've come to realize is that all of us every day on the planet are interacting with chemistry or chemical products in some way. And as John was already saying, the desire is there. Like, we all want to know that the things that we use are safe, that they're good for the environment. Industry doesn't want to make products that are a problem. And so really what we need to do is we need to start from a very young age when we're teaching children to think about the world and to think about things to change their mindset with, like, how do you go about developing a product? Like, how do you go about solving a problem even? Like, what do you think? And so if I was trying to like explain green chemistry to someone randomly that I met when I was visiting my brother recently, they were like, well, what's a really cool example of green chemistry or like something so I can like understand and explain this to people? And I think this is what I thought of. And I thought, if people had to leave today and be like, I went to a green chemistry thing and here's an example. I don't know if people have seen like laundry tablets, but everybody does laundry, or most people do laundry. They're familiar. We've all seen the big jugs, right? You've got your big tub and it's really heavy and it's the thing you drop when you are like leaving the grocery store because you try to carry it. Yeah, they're great. So there are these wonderful laundry tablets, which you can now get in a little paper bag, and they're much smaller, much lighter. They fit right in the bag. You don't look silly. You don't struggle with them, and they don't ooze all over your washing machine. So this is just like a really simple, relatable example, though, right? If I was going to take this through K through 12, or if I was going to take this to someone who's like my brother who thinks chemistry is magic, I could be like, hey, this is really simple, though, right? Like, if you were to redesign laundry and laundry detergent and say, how could I, maybe prevent plastic waste? Because that's, again, something we all see everywhere. Oh, do I need to actually make it a plastic bottle, or can I just concentrate it down into a tablet, right? And so if we find these things that they don't have to be super complicated, they don't have to be, right, super technical, but I think just bringing in not just us in the chemistry community, but also just general people into this community of understanding that, like, you don't have to be a research chemist to kind of make a difference in the way that people think, the way that people talk about stuff, the sorts of products that they're looking for, right? You can do something that's really accessible like this. And then from an education standpoint, it's kind of like scaffolding, because sure, you introduce waste prevention at a, very easy, accessible thing for K through 12, but then you could also extend this and say, okay, well, maybe I'm talking with high school students. Maybe I'm talking with intro college students. Well, yeah, that's great. We eliminated the plastic, but maybe let's push them to think at the next level. How could this design actually be efficient, right? What are the energy benefits of reducing the weight of your product? How much energy are we going to save from like transporting, and now you've pushed them to think just generally from a sustainability standpoint, maybe about like scope 2, scope 3 emissions, or like something like that. Again, it's not complicated, but this is something that all of a sudden people think about, and they're like, oh yeah, I guess hauling a truck full of, really large detergent jugs would take more energy than, just these smaller concentrated tablets. And you could push that even further, right? And then really get into the chemistry and start thinking about auxiliary elements in a process or in a product. Like, again, if you're doing the laundry and you're going to put the water in at the point of use in the washing machine, do you need the water in the product, or is it, something else? So I just wanted to use this as like a example of how sometimes things can get too complicated and we can get caught up in the weeds on really like, am I doing this right? Or what are the technicalities and stuff? But like bringing it down to a simple level and allowing yourself to be creative, I think that's what I'm really inspired by with green chemistry. And it's really made me feel a lot more, like empowered as a person in the world to try and think of where can we use this. So I kind of wanted to use that time to just, give you something that you could share with your friends and family too, because we're doing a lot of work and we want to continue doing all of that work in our professional community. But I think this is a bigger problem that we also want to bring other people in. And I am just going to leave with my own personal sustainability mantra. So I don't remember where I heard this. It's based on a general aphorism, but perfection should not be the barrier of progress. And I think that's what we're trying to do, again, with a lot of the work that we do at P2I with companies, is we recognize that, we're meeting people where they're at. And some have done a lot of projects and are really like very committed to sustainability. And some people are like, hey, we have a problem and we've got a maybe regulatory deadline coming up and we don't know what to do. We're not sure, whatever. And all of that's okay. But if we don't start somewhere and we don't take steps, right, we won't get to where we want to go eventually. So with that, I would like to thank you. I hope you enjoy the breakout sessions this afternoon. And if you want to learn anything more about what we do at P2I, there's our information, and or you can reach out to me or anyone else from the event. And thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Gather ourselves again and start our next session. I know the discussions and the engagement is really great. So I'm really happy to see all the excitement and conversations going. So our next session for about an hour and 15 minutes is going to be focusing on an industry panel. So what's going to happen is we're going to have some industry speakers. We're going to ask them to come up here to the front. We'll be interrogating them with questions. We'll ask them to no, I'm joking. It's not an interview. We'll have a discussion with an open discussion on the floor. We'll have some discussions. Amy Cannon is going to be moderating this session. And so we're going to make it very interactive and as interesting as we can make it. Okay?
All right. Awesome. Does this work too? Yes. Which one? All right, I'll use this for now. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to leave that. All right. Really excited to have this panel. Unfortunately, we have one panelist that had a family emergency last minute, and she had to fly down and support her mother-in-law. So that's Lisa Studnicki. So sorry we can't have Lisa represent up here. We're going to look for some other opportunities to engage her because she's fantastic and runs a really fantastic startup there. Just north of the border to our neighbors to the north. So the format here, I'm going to invite each of the panelists individually to come up. I'll introduce each one and then ask them to come up and share a few words to sort of, you can get to hear a little bit more about them and their company that they're representing to. And then I'll invite them all up here for that interrogation part for all the questions. And so as they're speaking, as you're hearing things, please start thinking about some questions, some ideas, jot some down. We're definitely going to have opportunities for questions from all of you, so please keep that in mind. We're also going to invite John to come up and join the panel too, after we've gone through, so we'll have a little lively discussion up here. And the first speaker I'm old, so I need my glasses. So the first speaker that we have is Dr. Anantha Desikan. So I'm really excited to have Anantha. He's been a fantastic partner over the years from ICL Group. He's the Executive Vice President and Chief Innovation and Technology Officer at ICL Group. He holds a PhD in Chemical Engineering from Clarkson University and a Bachelor of Technology in Chemical Engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology. So with that, come on up. You got it? Okay, thank you. And then, do you want to stand here or do you want to use the microphone? Or you can, there's either option, so just grab that one if you want to walk over. Okay?
Yeah, which
You
one?
can control the slides from
Okay.
any of them.
So I think it's good morning still, right? Good morning, everybody. Normally when I say I went to Clarkson, I have to explain to people where Clarkson is. So I don't think I need to do this in this crowd. So I'm privileged to be here. Thanks a lot, Amy, for inviting me. Thanks, John. We've had a great partnership with both Amy and John in both, and behind promoting K-12 education in green chemistry, and also working with John on his industrial aspect of things on how to bring green chemistry into the organization over the last 15 years, I think. And also we've used John as an advocate to kind of bridge the gap between academics, NGOs, and industry, I think, and learning from John and his perspective, I think. So I think that's been very useful. But John has told me one thing that I have to share with you. So we've had multiple discussions, internal discussions, and collaboration opportunities that we have explored with John. And John says, you guys listen a lot, but you always tell me why this won't work. Like that's what happens when industry collaborates with external partners. So I work with ICL. My name is Ananta Desikan. I'm based in Tarrytown, New York, a little bit south of here. 5-hour drive. It's an easy drive. I've been in the chemical industry for 30 years. I started with a Dutch chemical company after I finished at Clarkson. And then ended up with ICL, an Israeli chemical company headquartered in Tel Aviv. So I'll talk a little bit about the company and give some perspectives of what we are thinking about in terms of innovation. So I think this will work. So our company is about 100 years old, headquartered in Tel Aviv. Like you can ask, it's older than the state of Israel. It is. I think two entrepreneurs kind of looked at the Dead Sea in Israel. I don't know how many of you have been to the Dead Sea, and harvested the salt of the Dead Sea, which is rich in potassium chloride, which is a commodity fertilizer. And that's how the company started, and we still do that. So using the sun for evaporation and harvesting the salt of Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea salt is also rich in bromine. So we are the largest producer of bromine and bromine derivatives in the Dead Sea. And magnesium oxides, magnesium metal. So we have an integrated plant in the Dead Sea. So if any of you have, I don't know, anybody been to the Dead Sea? Have you floated in the Dead Sea waters? So that pond is actually our company's first pond, where we take the water, the sodium chloride precipitates, and then we take the carnallite, and then, and John, you've been, I think, at the Dead Sea also. So it's a $7 billion company in revenue. We are listed in the New York Stock Exchange and the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Pretty profitable company. We kind of go into industrial segments like where industrial products, global leader in bromine production, phosphates. We also do surface mining of phosphate in the Negev in Israel, and also we have a joint venture in China. And I'll talk a little bit about phosphates and things like that. It's used in food and industrial applications. We are actually getting into the electric battery manufacturing in the US with the lithium iron phosphate production in St. Louis, Missouri, as we speak. And then we also have a business that is looking at crop nutrition, fertilizers, if you will, but going from commodity fertilizers like the potassium chloride I mentioned, but into specialty fertilizers, addressing the needs of the farmers actually in looking at controlled release fertilizers, water-soluble fertilizers, liquid fertilizers, where you can use the fertigation thing, drip irrigation and things like that. And also moving into biologicals. As you look at fertilizers, people talk about synthetic fertilizers and its effect on the environment. We're looking at how do you improve nutrient use efficiency and things like that. So that's the business that is growing solutions. And of course, potash, we have, it's more a production base, and we have a very, very good cost competitive position because of the Dead Sea operations. So we have about 12,000 employees worldwide. US, Brazil, China, Europe, and Israel are the big Israel are the big centers of gravity or centers of excellence, if you will. So we kind of also have innovation across the globe. We have about 25 R&D centers. We have an R&D center in New York, and that's kind of my legacy in the company. And Israel, Brazil, China, as I mentioned. We have in Europe also. So globally spread and production centers all over the world. So although it's headquartered in Israel, it's a global company. And I wanted to talk about, again, we've over the last 5-7 years, we've created an innovation ecosystem where we are taking both internal innovation, external innovation, and trying to build new products. We've had an internal accelerator. John talked about academic research, industrial research. How do you bridge the gap with entrepreneurial research? So we've kind of looked at how do you build this gap by leveraging external innovation and things like that. And over the last 6 months, we are expanding our innovation footprint. I talked about biological fertilizers. So we've done a lot of collaboration with biological companies in terms of crop nutrition. We actually now set up a facility in Israel focused on biological fertilizers. And then in battery materials, we just opened an innovation center in St. Louis with a pilot plant where we could test technologies for making cathode active materials for electric vehicle batteries. So constantly evolving in terms of where we are. But 5 years ago, when we started looking at what should be our innovation strategy, we looked at both our internal capabilities and also external trends that are happening in the world. And kind of always you have to look at it, what are the external trends, what are internal capabilities, what are the gaps you have, and come up with an innovation strategy in terms of what should we be innovating on. So if you look at the world, this was 5 years ago, but this is I think quite relevant. When you talk about sustainability, green chemistry, I think these are things that are important things to also communicate to students, I think, when you look at what is happening in the world. John talked about 80% of the things have not been invented. But you look at the world, diminishing arable land, that kind of affects us because of our fertilizer business. Renewable energy, it's a good thing that how can we leverage renewable energy? How can we build products for in this space? Urbanization, dietary shifts are kind of things that affect food and agriculture. People are moving into urban environments around the world. I think this urbanization is mainly affecting Asia Pacific, if you will, right? Like in China, India, people are moving into urban areas. How does that affect materials, for example? Fire safety in buildings, things like that are affecting us. Regulations, of course. Our chemicals are regulated. We have threats on, we have to phase out certain chemicals because of legacy issues. So we're looking at that as a driver for us. Circular economy, we talked a lot about circular economy. That's kind of a near and dear topic for this audience, I think. And then at that time, we were talking about artificial intelligence. This was 5 years ago. We were talking about artificial intelligence mostly around industrial IoT, like industrial optimization. How do you use artificial intelligence for industrial operations? But today, last 2 years, this whole topic has changed completely. And this is still relevant for us, I think. And how do you develop new products in terms of with artificial intelligence and things like that? And so we saw intersecting trends, and then we came up with 4 areas where we wanted to work on: food, agriculture, energy, and materials. This is, again, looking at our history, looking at the future, looking at external trends. And so these are the 4 areas we kind of focused on. And I just wanted to also talk about what are we doing in these areas. So energy storage, we're looking at cathode active materials. We're looking at electrolytes. Stationary storage is really important when you look at renewable integration into the grid. You need batteries to kind of bridge the gap when the sun is shining and when the energy is needed. You hear a lot about it now, I think, in terms of how batteries are playing a role. And then, like John talked about, I think we started thinking about recycling. How can we use our chemistries to enable this mechanical and chemical recycling of materials back into the back into the whole system of making batteries. So this is something that we are working on today. So these are the innovation domains we are talking about. I talked about next generation fertilization. How do you improve nutrient use? Like phosphates. Phosphorus is a critical macronutrient. But when you apply phosphate fertilizers, I'm sure many of you are thinking about it. When you apply phosphate fertilizers, some of the phosphates are fixed in the soil because the interaction of the phosphate and with the soil elements. So they are not available for the plants. So we're looking at ways where we can use biological microbes, for example, to allow the phosphorus to be available for plants in terms of solubilization, and also looking at runoff issues, right, with phosphates. Most of the material is runoff that causes other issues. So can you use controlled release fertilizers to provide phosphates, coated fertilizers? And then looking at soil health itself. How can we think about soil health in terms of regenerative agriculture, and how can we build products around it? Food phosphates today are used as ingredients for texture modification, emulsification, preservation. So we're taking that knowledge and going into how can we think about alternative proteins, plant-based proteins, how can we affect texture in plant-based proteins. So we have a product line that can affect the structure of pea protein and make it texture similar to chicken nuggets, for example, right? Like that kind of a thing. How are we looking at it? And also clean label ingredients. Phosphate, again, as we look at regulations and environment, people want less chemicals in their food. And how can we then take plant-based functional ingredients to replace chemicals in food, like methyl cellulose is used as a binder, an emulsification agent. How can we replace methyl cellulose with a plant-based ingredient that is derived from rubisco, which is a duckweed, right? Like it has a protein. So that's something that we are working on. And then because we are backward integrated to certain minerals like bromine and phosphates and magnesium, we're looking at how can we develop novel solutions based on these elements. So we have examples of post-harvest solutions that we are developing with magnesium oxide to extend the shelf life of citrus fruits and things like that. So again, that's again this, and then digital farming. How can you use all the data that is provided to leverage better growing protocols and things like that? So one thing that I think about all the time is it's kind of diverse set of products that we develop. But sustainability is, I'm not telling just because of saying the word sustainability, but if you look at all these things, that's the overarching theme, I think, across our new product platforms. I think we are, as we look at legacy products and develop new products, I think climate change, sustainability is an overarching theme in these examples. And then, of course, as I mentioned, I don't know whether anybody knows what the 17th UN Sustainability Goal is. I don't know, John, do you know what the 17th UN Sustainability Goal? Yeah, partnerships, I think. So we leverage partnerships in developing these new solutions. So we have some internal capabilities, but you can see, like, again, a name that is familiar here is Binghamton University. So we've licensed a technology from SUNY Binghamton, which actually is replacing biocides in industrial water treatment. So it has a signaling molecule that prevents biofilm formation. So that's another example of how you can leverage green chemistry and we are trying to develop products based on it. And then we also partner with startups. You saw that graph from John, that academic research and industrial research, the bridge is entrepreneurs. So we are working quite extensively with startups to bring in technology into our company and leveraging their knowledge and things like that. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today and give you an overview of our company and how we are thinking about how do we incorporate green chemistry and other aspects into our ecosystem. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Anantha. I love that you're integrating sustainability across all of the work that you're doing at ICL. So think about questions. So our next speaker is Roy Green. Roy Green is the new director of the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. Been here 2 months. But he's got some really fantastic, he's got more than 25 years of experience in environmental science, sustainability, and corporate responsibility, including positions as senior ESG manager at Cooper Companies, corporate responsibility manager at HNI Corporation, and director of sustainability at Gunlock and HBF. He holds an MS in Energy Management and an advanced certificate in Energy Technology from the New York Institute of Technology, as well as a BS in Environmental Science from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Yes, woo woo, represent. And he holds a number of certifications and specialized training that he brings to his new current role. So, come on up, Roy. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you and appreciate the welcome. I do not have a bunch of introductory slides. P2I, I think Sarah did a great job explaining what we do at P2I and what we're all about and all the New York State companies that we can help and the areas and programs that we can do. But I am here with my industry hat today. So in this panel, I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that I've learned in industry trying to incorporate green chemistry and green technologies into products and processes. And so I've got a little bit of experience with that in each of the companies, the great companies that I work for. I can honestly say like every job I've had ever since I graduated from ESF has been a dream job, every single one. So when I was in environmental consulting back in the day, I did that for about 12 years. I helped many different companies and municipalities with their environmental issues and concerns. My last name is Green. I used to joke that it was brown. I changed it because green became a thing, but it really was green the whole way. I went to school in New York State. I grew up in New York State. I love this state. And, when I went into Gunlock, it's a furniture manufacturer. It's over 100 years old. Great company. At the time, they were facing a lot of regulatory push for getting rid of formaldehyde and other chemicals in the products. But instead of just doing what was required by regulation, they said, let's go beyond that. Let's get rid of it and go beyond the regulatory limits. Let's just see if we can eliminate it and eliminate the problem. And so they did a lot of work doing that. Some really cool technologies were implemented, including some mushroom materials and some low VOC chemistry. And that was leading in the industry to do that. When I went to Cooper Companies, they make contact lenses, so Cooper Vision. And then there's a women's fertility and fertility and birth control and some other women's gynecological products that they make. That stuff has all kinds of different chemistry in it. But again, a leading company, they wanted to improve that chemistry. So working on how do we make packaging that can be recycled? How can we use advanced recycling? How can we use mechanical recycling to turn things like molds and other things into raw feedstock? So the circular economy principles and those sorts of things. So I got to work on a lot of cool projects and processes and in my 25 years experience in industry. So that's why I'm here. I'm wearing my industry hat. Hopefully I can add to the conversation. So thank you.
I think you'll definitely be able to contribute to the conversation, Roy. That is amazing. Thank you. Okay. And our final panelist speaker is Arij Natowski. I'm very fortunate to work with Arij very closely in our partnership with Millipore Sigma. So Arij is the Green Chemistry Education Manager for the Life Sciences business of Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. You have to say all of that as I'm learning, in our partnership, which operates here in the United States and Canada as Millipore Sigma. So in one of her roles, as part of this role, she interfaces with our organization, Beyond Benign. And she spent the first 20 years of her career as an analytical chemist and application specialist for analytical laboratory equipment and liquid handling automation for high throughput screening in the pharma and biotech industries. And this industry experience is also complemented by an 11-year career teaching 7th grade science. So really nice combination, talking about bridging the gap here. So Arij received her BS in biochemistry and MS in toxicology from, wait for it, SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry. Whoop, whoop, represent. Okay, come on up, Arij.
All right, there's that one, or if you want to walk around.
Yeah,
I
because
think
you
can
could
do
just see
that
my
one.
hair, right? If I'm standing.
Yeah, that's right.
Does that work better? Okay. All right. Quick question: how many Stumpies are in the room? Yes.
I teach there.
Okay, well, I still count you as a Stumpy. So environmental science and forestry is my alma mater. I am a Syracuse girl. I grew up there. I bleed orange, even though I moved to Connecticut and now live in New Jersey. But I'm still an orange girl. And so the sad thing about ESF, they are not a green chemistry commitment signer. Did you all know that? SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry is not a green chemistry commitment signer, nor do they actually have curriculum with green chemistry.
You're right.
That's right. And so tomorrow, I am pushing the doors open, and I'm going to go talk to the chemistry department chair and say, really? Really? This is what? So, yeah, it's something to think about. All of you guys. All right, so yes, as Amy said, I am the Green Chemistry Education Manager for Millipore Sigma. I'm not going to say the whole thing. We are a chemical company. You guys know us as Sigma Aldrich, right? Red bottles, right? And of course, Milliq, water systems, right? We also have a electronics division and a healthcare division, as well as life sciences. So, I am part of sustainability and social business innovation, and within that group, I'm actually part of community and employee engagement. So we're the outreach for the company, all right? We are responsible for making partnerships like with Beyond Benign and with other types of different organizations like Girl Start, etc. And what we want to do is we want to further STEM/STEAM education. That's what our goal is. So I'm gonna play this little video. I hope it works, so that you can see one of the things that we do. And really, let's see. Here we go. This is one part of our outreach. This is the Curiosity Cube, and it is a retrofitted mobile shipping container. It's a laboratory. We have 2 of these in the United States. We have 2 of them in Europe, and we just launched our first one in Africa. So what we do is we bring kids into the Curiosity Cube, and they go through and they do different hands-on experiments. And every year there is a different theme for the Curiosity Cube. So this past year was sustainability. That was last year. And then this year is AI. Last year's sustainability experiments included the life cycle of a t-shirt, so that kids could kind of see what it was like, what is organic threads, etc. So the whole idea is get kids interested in science around them and ask questions. So we've been doing this since 2017, and it's really quite amazing. The kids love this thing. I personally think it's awesome. And it's always staffed by our employees as volunteers. So we will do this. We'll go out, our places for manufacturing, etc. We'll go run the labs with the kids, bring the kids inside, etc. So this is just one aspect of our outreach program. So let's see.
This allows employees to leverage.
I love our Curiosity Cube. The next that we have is our Curiosity Labs. So we have a whole series of labs that we have designed with WashU in St. Louis, and they're all NGSS standards. And so we've got all these different labs that our employees will go to the classroom, and we will go ahead and run the lab for the teacher. So we give them kind of a break, because we all know that teaching is just so easy. You just show up. You know how that comment was, right? So all of these are really easy. They come with PowerPoint presentations. They have the worksheets. They have the assessments. Like, everything is there. It's all a kit. It's a wonderful thing. If you're interested in this, if you have a Millipore Sigma facility, and you'd be surprised how many are around there, this is part of our SPARK program, Spark Curiosity in the Next Generation of Science. And the other thing for all of you educators is we have our Curiosity Labs at home. I personally used these when I was a middle school teacher, before I even knew about this thing. But they're 15 to 20 minutes, and the kids can do them at home, and they're great for homework assignments. They're really easy. The kids love them, and they're like, oh, I can do science at home with just like a cup and a spoon, and Mom and Dad, I'm so cool, and you need to get me goggles. Like, they're just, they love them. They love them. So like I mentioned, we also form partnerships. And we have a partnership with Beyond Benign. And we actually been working with Beyond Benign, I think, since 2013 or 2015. But we expanded our partnership in 2023. And the whole idea is we're raising the bar. We're trying to get industry to say, you need to ask for skills in green chemistry. And we need universities to actually teach those skills. What a concept. Oh my goodness, teach it. How else are they gonna know it? So we have been doing this by supporting the green chemistry teaching and learning community, and we also, me, basically, go around pushing the green chemistry commitment. So the whole idea is that we need to provide a pipeline of future scientists who know what green chemistry is and have a sustainability mindset. That's what it's all about. So this is, to date, we have over 239 GCC signers, which means that we've got almost 7,000 faculty that are engaged, and we are reaching 1.68 million students. And our goal, though, by 2030 is to have 525 signers, and we want to reach 14.8 million students. This is a global program, and we support it all over the world. We try to help as much as we can with different events with Beyond Benign. So basically, I just sort of want to leave you guys with this, and I always end most of my presentations with this. John Dewey, great educator, always said, if you teach today's students with yesterday's knowledge, then you rob them of tomorrow. And it's true. As educators, we want to equip our students with the latest and the greatest, and we want them to think and ask questions and make science relevant. And I think that green chemistry really brings that home. Totally, really home. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Arej. All right, I'm going to invite all of our panelists to come on up. We've got some nice seats for you up here. John, that includes you. You're not getting out of this. We're going to include you on this discussion. So you've heard from, okay, thank you. You've heard from each of them. Sorry you're not on the slide, John, just realizing that. I know you know Lisa, so you could,
Yes,
you could represent her.
Lisa works at GL Chemtech, a Toronto company, and her mother-in-law is having open heart surgery and had to rush to be at that, so that's why she's not here. So she apologizes for not being here, so I'm her replacement. And as Amy's husband, having her have anything with the word moderate in the middle of it is confusing to me, but that's a different subject.
That's also over like the bottles of wine that John's talking about. So that can be later if anyone's hanging around.
How many bottles of wine?
I don't know. He kept saying a couple bottles. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah.
If we're all in, we got 8.
That's right. If anyone was counting. Okay, I think each of you touched upon this a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe I'll move around in a second. But I think one of the misconceptions, I should say, about green chemistry is that it might hinder innovation. But I think each of you have talked a little bit about this, where it's more, how do you use green chemistry as a driver for innovation, rather than maybe if we might come in with a preconceived notion that it might hinder it or sort of lock our hands a bit. How do you and feel free to like draw upon your own experiences from industry and all of that, but I'm curious to hear your perspectives. I don't know who would like to start.
Okay, I guess I'll start. So from my perspective, green chemistry has been key to innovation, and it really is an intersection, and I think John mentioned this, but it has to be economically viable. It has to perform as well as whatever it is that it's replacing, if not better. And it has to have no impact or minimal impact to be able to be used in industry. So it also takes some support and commitment of the people in the industry. So I've been lucky enough to work for organizations that are into this and want to do the right thing, and they really believe in it, and so there's top-down support. But then it also takes a champion inside the organization to drive the teams towards those innovations. And so for me, one of the examples is we were looking at replacing a complex piece of a chair, and this chair had a really complex curve in it, but it was the way it was designed. So we worked with the designer on how to actually make this work, but we used an alternative material, which happened to be a mushroom-based material at the time, and we implemented that into the design for environment process, which is a process at Gunlock that I helped implement in the first place. But by putting it into the process, by making it part of the stage gates and the product development piece, and using the requirements that we wanted to replace this complex piece of wood with something more sustainable, we opened up the opportunity to use green chemistry and use alternative materials, and it worked pretty well doing that. And it ended up being 20% cheaper. It also ended up performing better, and it ended up being the first commercial application of that technology, which allowed that particular entrepreneurial company to expand.
Sounds like a nice case study.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. I think that when you talk about green chemistry, the whole notion that it's inhibitory to innovation, to me, is really ridiculous. You're solving problems that you literally have to think outside of the general scheme. And it may not be easier, but it's certainly more effective and more rewarding. Our company, for example, came up with a new solvent called herein. It's bio-based. It's from, I believe, whiskey feedstock, or the waste products from the whiskey industry. I think the whole point is that you need to look at things with a different view. And the wonderful thing about chemistry students is that if you give them a little bit of room with creativity, they're going to find another way. So if you give them the tools with green chemistry, they're definitely going to be able to come up with something novel.
Yeah, I think I look at how do you define innovation, I think, sometimes. So innovation is not an invention, right, only, right? So innovation is taking an invention and creating value for the user or the customer, plus creating value for your company, or creating value, I think, in general. I think green chemistry has to, I think John touched upon it, and we face this challenge all the time, is, okay, just saying sustainable, it's a sustainable product doesn't sell, I think.
So we had to create why and value proposition, and that's the challenge, I think, in terms of green chemistry. I saw the example Sarah talked about this a solid detergent thing, and I'll give an example where we failed, I think, as a company. We had a chlorine tablet company in our business portfolio a few years ago, basically pool chemicals. So the tablet, you have two types of tablets, the trichlorocyanurate and the dichlorocyanurate. The dichloro actually dissolves faster. That's the shock that you use in pools. And so one of the things we created was creating these tablets that you can dispense into toilets and things like that, like Clorox replacement. So you don't have to ship a lot of Clorox, but these tablets. And then Clorox has this flammability thing issue. So all the value propositions were there, but we failed, I think, because we didn't know how to innovate in that space or provide value to the customer and things like that. So I think bringing all that together is where the green chemistry part is we are looking at. We actually have incorporated some of the green chemistry principles that John and Paul Anastas actually developed into our development process. So we have to, we call it a sustainability thing score that we have to pass before we go into the process. So we kind of incorporate things, and I gave you also examples where our chemicals are challenged because of the environmental footprint, and so we have to develop new chemistries based on these principles, I think. So that's kind of where we are looking at. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Just three quick things. One, when people say, oh, it's a restriction, if you look at how we teach chemistry across the world, we all have the same curriculum at every university. We have the same courses, the same textbooks, the same journals, going to the same conferences. And so when you look at the diversity of education, no matter what the name of the university is, it's pretty much all the same. And when these scientists, chemists get into industry, they're all doing pretty much the same thing. So if you said to them, you can no longer use a molecule that starts with the letter D, although that's kind of silly, it makes them think different. And that's a competitive advantage when people are thinking different. Now saying don't use the letter D is kind of silly. Why not say let's focus on green chemistry? And that differentiation, in my opinion, is an accelerant to R&D. So that's number one. Number two, people working with policies, REACH legislation, TSCA, they say, oh, we're going to create these government policies and force industry to clean up its act. Not one PhD graduating with a chemistry material science degree could tell you what REACH is, what TSCA is. It works for manufacturing and stuff, but not for research. And so what happens is a fresh scientist out of university goes working at a company, invents something, the company gets excited, their heart starts beating, they put money on it, a project goes, and then like a year later, someone says, wait a minute, we can't use that reagent, we can't use that. And they go, oh, so now they have to hope they can reinvent it, but sometimes they just can't. Now there's adversity. The researchers are angry at the regulatory people for saying, why can't we do our product? If the inventor, that fundamental scientist, understands these real-world consequences, not only is it faster to market, but it eases that relationship from an adversity to a collaboration. And then finally, marketing. Like I said, I'm a chemist, I'm focused on chemistry. The more people can get society to demand sustainability, the easier it's going to be for all of us. But there's an interesting thing about this. If a company invented a new product that was the color blue, and a salesperson said, I can't sell the color blue, they would fire that salesperson. But if they say, I can't sell sustainability, oh, you're right. And for some reason, we have this culture where sustainability has become the excuse for failure. And maybe if the salespeople were better at their job, they would, because salespeople sell you stuff that you don't really need all the time. So why should sustainability be a barrier to anything else? So I think we have culturally embraced that sustainability is a barrier, when it's only a barrier if we make it so.
All right, fantastic points, and I think you're already getting to some skills gaps too that we need to fill. I want to touch upon something that Anantha just brought up, some tools, internal tools and things like that. And I know I'm going to look at you, Arij, to maybe speak a little bit about, what kind of internal tools are you using to sort of drive innovation and bring green chemistry into R&D, into, how we're kind of rethinking things. Yeah, go ahead.
For Arish, because needs to be not her saying it, I have to say it. Millipore Sigma has on their website, if you go to the catalog and try to buy a product, which you probably all have done, Sigma Aldrich, there is a button that you can assess different reagents, and it does a 12 principles of green chemistry assessment, cleverly named dozen. So every university, every organic chemistry lab should have as part of it to teach the students to go on the Millipore Sigma website and realize there is a tool that helps you imagine that, and that's just an amazing consequence of the work that Millipore Sigma has been doing to promote green chemistry.
So to elaborate a little bit on that, first of all, we also have our design for sustainability for all new products that are coming out, and they have to meet very specific scorecards in order to go through the entire product development. But one of those major things is dozen, and it literally uses an algorithm to quantify the greenness of a process. And the wonderful thing about it is that it's free. It's available for anybody. You're safe as far as security, privacy, etc. Millipore Sigma can't see what you're doing, or anything like that. And we've actually incorporated that into our electronic lab notebook. So now all of our synthesis chemists have dozen already incorporated into that software. So every single step they're using, every reagent that they use, and it's not just about the reagents, but it's about energy efficiency, toxicity, all of that is incorporated. So they've got a score that they can look at. And this is something that has also been introduced into Beyond Benign's curriculum. So you can teach students how to use it. And quite frankly, I don't know why everybody isn't using this tool. I mean, really, I don't know why everybody isn't using it. It's free. And it literally points out where the deficits are. Very simple.
Yeah, we have some modules on the GCTLC, so maybe we can link them in the group. So join the group, and we'll link those straight over. Does anybody want to add anything to any additional tools?
I think no, I think I have to look it up. I don't know. So it's something I learned today. That's always good. But I think we've also incorporated. I think somebody talked about analytical agents and things like that. We develop small molecules, and toxicity is a big topic, right? So maybe AI. Somebody asked about AI. That can help us accelerate some of these innovations, and instead of I think one barrier is toxicity testing. It's expensive. How do you test it? When do you test, and all that stuff? So I think some tools using green chemistry principles will help us there. We've tried to use tools like zebrafish modeling instead of human toxicity things that are pretty interesting. Skin testing with some other new techniques like that, so that you don't have to do animal testing. Cell-based things like that. So we've tried. Again, it's not. I think it's a part of this whole network of things. Learning about zebrafish and how does that help into how do you simulate or predict toxicity is an interesting topic also. I think so we've tried to use some of these techniques. I think in our product development processes. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to make a comment. So when I graduated, my first job was with a generic pharmaceutical house. And so it was GMP, GLP, and of course we had to do all our methods under the US Pharmacopoeia. And it's literally a cookbook, right? You have to follow these particular steps. Just like the EPA, all right? How many of you have actually looked at these analytical tests? Because I'll tell you what, that would be an amazing research project for some of your students, just to take those methodologies and make them greener. That is that is something that really needs to be looked at. And it's so funny because we go through all of this and we go ahead and create these new things, and yet we're relying on these tests that have all these horrible things in them to say that it's okay. So, very good point.
Question along that line with your single-use products.
Yeah.
Do you have a good sales pitch that you use to sell why single-use versus reusable is the right path to use?
So I will tell you that the single use is specifically mainly in medical devices. And so a lot of it is about cross-contamination, et cetera. But the interesting thing is with green chemistry, these new polymers are being designed so that they can be recycled in some manner. So we're still, I hear you. We're still, yeah, exactly.
I support the thought of single use because a lot of my focus is on how do I get that clean water in the front end and how do I treat all that water from the reuse process. People don't think about just the simple concept of if you reuse your cup every day, but people are hand washing them all day long, not dishwashing them. You're creating more waste than if you just use a paper cup. So getting people to look at that whole picture on single use in manufacturing being okay because it does eliminate other streams of waste. We have to look at that balance. And I don't know if that doesn't looks at your products the same way it does.
It's mainly the processes. It looks as the process.
So that is a good point, though. One of the tools that we used a lot in both of the, well, actually several of the industries that I worked in, so textiles, furniture, and medical devices, is life cycle assessment. And that is an important tool to look at those comparative trade-offs. And so you don't want unintended consequences. You don't want to make something worse by making something better. That tool does help with that analysis and that comparative look at the impacts throughout the life cycle of the product.
Yeah, and it's a good point. It's not simple. You know, these are complicated solutions, and it's not always an easy swap. So before I jump over to I was going to talk a little bit about skills gap, and then I do want to be able to take questions from you all. I have one more sort of on this innovation front. We don't have all the answers. Sustainability, we know, is a driver, right? How much do you see it being a driver with the current environment? And it's not just, I don't want to get political here, so it's not just here in the US, it's global, right? But we do see some sort of bumps in the road and some pushback from time to time. Are you seeing the trend still within the industry sector moving towards sustainability? Are you seeing any setbacks, with the current landscape? Sorry, don't want to get political, so we can trying to.
No, I think you have, it is an issue, right? So our company, we've not changed anything. That's one thing I can say. I think it's all about making business sense, right? Sustainability is also sustainable business and all that stuff. So it's important for us. We just published our ESG report. I think we have targets, scope 1, 2, 3 emissions and all that stuff, and nothing has changed. But it does affect, our the battery business I mentioned today, today, that the whole political environment has an impact on the sustainability of that business even. How do we kick it off the ground with all the noise around and all the stuff? So, but I think if you look at longer term issues, longer term things, I think it is, we have to think long term, and that's how we are addressing it. Yeah.
I can say that Millport Sigma and Merck has not changed any of their stance on sustainability or the goals that they have for it. And I think it's good business, and it's just common sense. Honestly, it's just common sense to do it the right way the first time and then not have to worry about it later.
I don't think it's polarized too. In 2019, there was the Green and Sustainable Chemistry Act of 2019. I helped and I testified to the House and the Senate. It passed unanimously. The Democrats, the Republicans, 100% signature. It is now a law. the Green and Sustainable Chemistry Act of 2019. If you're on the environmental side, there's a lot to love. If you're on the economic competitive side, there's a lot to love. And so I don't see this as a polarized thing. You know, the only thing creates the polarization is an absence of knowledge. You hear the word green, you hear the word chemistry, and you construct some image. But when people take the time to understand what it is, you know, I've given these talks so many times. Usually people come up and say, oh, now I understand. You know, very, very rare that I don't agree, this is wrong. I think it's an awareness issue. Once people get it, it's like, yeah, it just makes sense.
And I would just add that for the industries that I've worked in, and even the last one, a lot of the drivers around the sustainability was not politics, it was customers. So customers are wanting these things, and whether it's a direct customer as a consumer, or it's a distributor, or a OEM or white label or whatever it is, they want these things, and that driver is very powerful, and that's a bigger driver than I would say any of the other drivers, including investors and some of that. So some of the investor pressures that I saw this already occurring was backing off, and some of the regulatory pressure has been backing off in especially the U.S. In Europe, it was backing off a little bit as well, but not. It's more of a delay, not really a reprieve. So but the consumer/customer pressure is as strong as ever. And this generation currently that's coming into play, including my kids and their friends, it is unacceptable not to go down the sustainability route.
Yeah, that's good news. So and so I'll have this as my sort of last question for now. So please, think of your questions, and they're coming next. So on that note, sort of the next generation, what do you think is needed in the next generation of workforce, and how might we bridge that gap from higher ed and K-12 and better prepare students, maybe not better, but just prepare students for some of the skills that are needed in your businesses, in your companies that you represent, and just in the chemical enterprise as a whole? What are some of the up and coming skills in sustainability, green chemistry that you're seeing that you might not be coming either traditionally in the workforce, or that you're not seeing coming into your workforce? And who wants to? That's a big question.
I'll just start. Two things for me is, one, we need to train people to exist and thrive in a confusing environment. You take a class, you have a class at, a test here, a hit here, and then a final exam, you get a grade. You take a test here, you take this. Well, that isn't the way the real world works. When they get into industry, they find all of this ambiguity, and they go, well, just tell me. And so I think, one, we have to look at that and realize that the students are going to be thrust into an ambiguous world, and we need to train and help them understand how to thrive in that ambiguity. And the second is communication, communication, communication. The best product on the market is not the technical best, not the cost-effective best, but the best communicated. Scientists get awards for doing amazing science aren't always the ones that are doing the best science. They have communicated it the best. In any ecosystem, being able to explain why your science is better is really the most important skill we can give, and I don't think we are training students. And that doesn't mean learn how to publish a paper in a journal. It means how to, so the best way to do this, in my opinion, is to have outreach. University students should be speaking to K through 12 students. You can talk to another scientist and use acronyms and words like that, but when you're talking to a 10-year-old, you're not going to be able to say Diels-Alder or SN2. You're going to have to explain it in real worlds, and that skill, not only will that student be inspired by the undergraduate or graduate student, but that undergraduate or graduate student will learn communication skills, and I think that's one of the most important things that industry, universities, and K through 12 can do better. So those two things, functioning in ambiguity and communication skills, so that we can be better at what we do.
I'd like to comment too that you're teaching chemistry, but we oftentimes don't go and talk to students who are actually getting degrees in education, who are going to be science teachers, and they are totally disconnected. So how are these teachers supposed to know how to teach green chemistry if they've never been exposed to it? And yet it's on the same campus. You might have a center for sustainability, yet there's no communication between them. There's nobody talking to students involved in policy making or anything like that. I think for our company in particular, when we're looking to hire, we're looking for people who can present themselves, who show a passion for what they're looking for. And sometimes I think universities tend to squash passion in a lot of our students. So we need to give them a little bit more room to breathe and to feel free to question. When they come into the industry, the first thing we tell them is don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the only way you're going to be able to know how to work in this environment.
Yeah, adding to this, I think is also I think K to 12 is difficult, but communication is important. But the universities also training about entrepreneurship, I think, is an important area. How do you build it? Solving big problems, I think, right? Like this is the time to think about those things. Is how do we solve a big problem? I think those are, if you can combine some of the things that was mentioned here to that, I think that would be very useful, I think, yeah.
And I would probably just add, all those things are great points, and I agree 100% with all of them. But interdisciplinary in skills, right? So like not just looking at one area, one skill set. Like green chemistry is great, but combine it with life cycle thinking, combine it with business and entrepreneurial thinking, combine it with communication skills. I mean, that's an important point. Like if you have a great idea but no one hears about it, it's not going to be put out into the world. So all that is what I think needs to happen. And then critical thinking, right? So just don't trust your AI chatbot. You need to use your human intelligence as well to go back and forth with your AI chatbot and get the results that you want, but also validate and check everything. So the critical thinking skills are going to be key as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. Speaks to the these complex issues require complex and interdisciplinary solutions. Questions?
I think it's still a problem, but also the problem now is the capital intensity in the U.S., for example, compared to other parts of the world is incredible. It's so it's a big challenge, I think. So I think I don't know. It's but you have to overcome it maybe with intensification of process, those kind of things. But it's a pretty if you're an R&D, you know this all the time. Your projects are killed because of economics, capital economics, I think. It's not,
It's also a potential opportunity. Again, politics aside, both U.S. and Europe making a big push for manufacturing locally. We're bringing back manufacturing. While I would push back a little on everything has to be drop-in, I do understand the economics of if we have an asset, there's certain things it can and can't do. But as we are bringing new manufacturing processes, if those new manufacturing processes aren't up to state of the art of green chemistry, that's a head scratcher for me. But it also, for developing countries that don't have a manufacturing base, it's a competitive advantage because they don't have to look at the takedown economics of the existing infrastructure. So where there's a problem, there's also a potential opportunity. So being the optimist that I am, I see that maybe this is an opportunity too.
I think adding to that, John, I think is also we have to get off the mindset that it has to fit an existing plant because we've done it a couple of times. So we kind of design our molecule based on what our capability is, and it may not be the 100% green solution. And then you do it, and after 5 years, you figure out if I had gone down a different path, maybe it would have been a better value proposition and an economic value. So I think it's we have to take that into account. I think it's very important. I think I saw and also think outside the box. I just met an entrepreneur who is doing lithium. He's thinking about lithium production in the U.S. For batteries, but he's actually come up with an idea of extracting lithium from the produced water from shale gas. So the shale gas, the produced water is a waste. Again, whether shale gas is a thing or it's a controversial topic or not is another topic. But so he's actually trying to do this with ion exchange and all that stuff, working with national labs. But he's also looking at a hub and spoke model, because he can put a 5,000-ton lithium chloride production in the Permian Basin in different locations. Capital economics is very cheap compared to a centralized location. And then he's taking the lithium chloride and then coming and making lithium carbonate in a centralized location. So he's looking at the capital economics. And so it's an interesting model. So I think thinking around this capital thing is very important, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, question over here. And feel free to introduce yourself.
I was going to say, Neil Abrams, SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. I'm a materials and inorganic chemist, and I have a question regarding kind of sometimes the juxtaposing pieces of sustainability and energy, and I'll give just one specific example, which would be something like a perovskite solar cell. So we want renewable energy, green energy, but these materials are made typically with something like lead. Is it of an opinion that we shouldn't have started that research in the first place because it started with hazardous chemicals? And from a teaching standpoint, as we're looking at bringing in new technologies to our students and saying, here's new things, and they're challenging us and saying, but how is it better? Both kind of how do you answer that question, and where would kind of that path go? So there's my question.
Good question. Who wants to start?
Being in the photovoltaics industry, that's come up a lot. That I'm always hesitant to tell anybody they shouldn't do the research they want to do. There's a difference between creating the knowledge and then utilizing that knowledge. So in my fantasy land, if we could come up with an alternative to the lead materials for perovskite, but understand mechanistically why perovskite is doing what it's doing, that would be great. So it is a critical invention in the pathway to improving photovoltaics. Getting it shot through to, manufacturing, I don't think the benefit of it actually justifies its use. But unfortunately, investment community is more about what is cool, what other people are investing in, as opposed to what we really should do. And I use as an example the pharma industry 4 months ago made an announcement. In my opinion, the biggest challenge to human survivability, one of them in climate change, is that we're losing the battle for antimicrobials. All right, that our antimicrobials, we got resistance to them, and we're losing that battle. As the temperature increases, microbial growth increases, and with that, the pathogens with microbial growth. So we need better antimicrobials. The top 3 pharmaceutical companies working in antimicrobials got out of the business and announced they didn't see a good enough return on the investment. So the survivability of the human race is not a good enough return on the investment. We're messed up in how we make these decisions, and that's not something chemists can do, but we as a society need to question how we make these decisions.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say that solar cell technology is on the cusp of being launched commercially, and so there's been a lot of research into it. I'm not sure how much lead actually comes out of it during the course of its life, or how much of a concern it is from a hazard standpoint, from a health and safety perspective. But I do know the existing solar industry has legacy PFCs and perfluorinated chemicals. So is lead better or worse than PFCs? I can't answer that. I think there's an area of research that could be further explored. And I think it's important, if there is a way to substitute that, we should try to find that as well. So we can have better efficiency, we can have flexible, thin cell solar panels that actually work and don't provide a concern or harm.
Yeah, I think also the life cycle thing as an example. Maybe you can use that. End of life what you do with lead-based. And I think perovskites have not taken off, right? Like, and maybe that's the reason, maybe in that sense. And so there is a lot of progress, but it's always in the lab scale, not in the commercial scale. Maybe that, that's kind of leads to material selection and things like that also. Yeah. So, but looking at end of life is important, I think, in that sense. Yeah. Yeah.
And then with green chemistry, we ask ourselves not just what is the customer going to be exposed to, but who's manufacturing it, who's in the vicinity of the manufacturing company. At the end of life, where is it going to go, what's going to process it? So those decisions that the inventor makes in the lab as they reach for a flask to use has profound impact. But if they're not trained to recognize that, they're just arbitrarily picking things.
That's great. Do we have a question back here?
I'm Paschalis Alexandridis. I'm a professor at the University of Buffalo, which is also sort of a SUNY school. I'm a chemical engineer. My question is about life cycle assessment. Life cycle assessment allows you to compare, apples and oranges. The question has two parts. One, the common life cycle assessment, measures energy, emissions. And I wonder, is this a good enough substitute for the concepts of Greek chemistry? And if not, what can we do about it? And the second part of the question is, although it was mentioned, LCA, I don't see it yet being sort of at college level course. I don't see it much, discussed in what this New York Institute is doing. So how do you see LCA through education sort of permeating, industry and academia?
So I'll start, I guess. So P2I does offer LCA services as part of our overall scope of offerings. So typically what we do, though, is we're looking to help a company and solve a specific sort of problem. So we use LCA as a tool to help do that. So we might do comparative assessments. Like, let's say there's a green technology that someone wants to bring to the market. We might do a comparative assessment of that technology versus the existing technology, and we use it as a tool for that. For your first part of your question, is it a replacement for green chemistry? I don't think it is. I don't think it's detailed enough or into the specifics of the chemistry enough. A lot of times with LCA, you're taking data that exists in a database. Sometimes it's specific data from a customer that you're trying to help or a client that you're trying to help. So it's they're manufacturing data on energy, waste, water, emissions, those sorts of things. But you're looking at the upstream impacts, and you don't always have that data, so you're using a data set like an eco-met data set to get the surrogate data that you use in your life cycle assessment. So it isn't detailed enough, I would think, to replace green chemistry or green chemistry principles.
And again, I respect LCA as an important skill, but from my perspective, the way I look at it is if I'm a runner and I buy the most expensive stopwatch, and I now can time to the nanosecond my 50-yard sprint, my 20-yard sprint, that's important to be a good runner, but it doesn't make me a better runner. And so LCA makes sure that we're on target, that we're doing the right thing, but it's not telling us how to improve. It's telling us, have we improved? Green chemistry isn't have we improved, it's how we improved. It's the mechanisms to improve. So you do green chemistry, then you run an LCA to validate that you've actually succeeded. So they're kind of compatible that way. They're not like alternatives. One is the how to do it, and one is to evaluate have you succeeded, in my opinion.
But I think answering one part of the question is LCAs are complicated, right? Like, and I think the skill set, it's like sometimes I think early on statistics and design of experiments and all that stuff is it's not taught in school a lot. And so I think taking into the comments about green chemistry and LCA is important, but education of LCA, I think at the university level, I think is still lacking. I think in my mind at least, it's a kind of, otherwise you go into industry and then you have to use consultants and. But you are doing it in the institute here, I think. But maybe taking that and maybe incorporating into university curriculum might be something that maybe you've thought about, but I think it's really important. I think, yeah.
And I think some universities are already doing that.
Doing that, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we have some resources for that too, that I'll post in the groups, so join the groups. We have a toxicology unit that's has some LCA, and we're also hearing that from our industry partners, that there's that gap of and it's not, you know, to John's point, not that we all need to start running LCAs all the time, but more just being aware of that as a whole. So.
And maybe I think, I was just thinking about it, if you look at this whole generative AI and all the stuff that's coming up, maybe LCAs are, it's not rocket science anymore, but we can be you can make it easier with using these tools, maybe that kind of thing. Yeah.
Maybe, but there's a lot of, let's say, skill set involved in selecting the right materials and process characterization and making sure the inputs and outputs are correct. There's a lot that goes into that.
It's complex.
It's complex. No. I'm just saying maybe, but adding into this, maybe make it simpler. I don't know. It's a thought. Yeah.
If, again, being the optimist, far too many people love to be the one to reveal, you thought this was good, but I did an LCA, it's actually bad. Carry that out. Everybody is going to be told, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And the easiest thing in the world is to tell someone why not to do something. To put yourself on the line and say, let's do that, takes courage. So we don't need more headwinds to stop innovation. We need to, when it's implemented, we got to definitely do the LCA to make sure we're being wise in how we, but research, it shouldn't be too early in the research that, well, wait a minute, you wanted to do this, do a complete LCA, spend 6 months evaluating if you're successful, is it worth doing? We don't have the awareness to know other potential uses of that technology. So I just want to make sure that we keep this. So I'm science advisor for the International Space Station. Why? Because when we do LCAs, there's a lot to do with what we consider our boundary conditions. Some people say paper is better. Some people say plastic is better. Why? Because they've chosen their boundary conditions. And sometimes it doesn't actually narrow down, it oscillates. With this set of boundary conditions, paper's better. With this set, it's plastic's better. And it goes back and forth. So what do you want? On the International Space Station, there's no ambiguity of your boundary conditions. And so I think from a thought perspective, trying to isolate that reality is an important aspect. But we don't need more negativity. Everyone is being shown, as Anantha said, most companies will tell you 100 reasons why not to do something. You don't need help with that one. We don't want to manufacture products that are inappropriate, but we need all the research tools we can get.
All right, that's fantastic. I'm going to ask our panelists one final question. I'm asking to be brief because we are at the 12 o'clock mark here for lunch. But this has been fantastic, by the way. Thank you. And I know we have a lot of challenges that we have in our world, in our society. But I often don't like to think of them as challenges either. They're more opportunities, right? So, where do you think the opportunities are in the next 5-10 years? And again, maybe pick one little nugget that you want to share here. And that could either be to address, the challenges that we see in greener innovations. It could be skills gaps, students, engaging in bridging to, students and academia and K-12. But where do you see some of the biggest opportunities, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? Sorry, big question. I'm asking you to be brief. That's really a big challenge. Sorry. Which way do we want to start here?
So I will jump in. And I think the biggest opportunity is still within education. I still think that we tend to diminish the ability of children, and they are sponges and they want to learn, and the sooner we show them how science is relevant to their everyday life, the more likely they are to ask questions and try different things and do different things. Teaching 7th graders, I found out very, very quickly that they don't think science exists in their life at all. I was like, hello, what are you using you're ignoring me and texting right now. Like, that is science. So I think that I still have a lot of hope that especially these generations coming up, are going to take everything that we're doing and figure out the right way to implement it. But we need to give them some better tools.
I'm going to be very specific, I think. I think the opportunities are in mitigating GHG emissions, I think, to impact climate change. I think technology is evolving a lot. How can we implement some of these techniques to really address some of these challenges, I think, is the big opportunity.
There's a whole nother panel on that one. Yeah.
I'll go. So I think the big opportunity is really taking our waste products and turning them into resources. So it's really the circularity concept, and there's a lot in that area. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to expand. And also, I want my Star Trek future. Where are my teleporters and my transporters and my dematerialization technology? I want that future.
I'm with you. Yeah, we're with you.
Or that, but.
Yeah. My last is just, the opportunity has got to be optimism. We're just getting into a world where despair is just getting too overwhelming. And so optimism. No student is going to roll up their sleeves and try to tackle this if they're told it's impossible, it can't be done. And I feel that students come into our high schools and our universities overwhelmingly optimistic, and we beat it out of them. All right, we got to stop that. We got to, and it's about valuing intuition. Education, I think we overvalue precedent. If you're going to do something, explain why you're sure it's going to work. So this person did this, and that is the opposite of innovation. We need to allow people to believe in themselves and to create that. And just instead of teaching creativity, let's assume that the students were creative before they came. What are we doing to take it away? And that, I think, is our opportunity to reevaluate Western education, to give people that sense of belief that they can do stuff themselves.
I love this. So much optimism and opportunities. So thank you all so much. Let's thank our panelists.